let's try that again. I heard him. Good morning. Happy spring. It's good to be back. And so for those of you who are worried that this is going to stay, I told Cynthia I would do it for one Sunday and then we will discard it. So, all right. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to all those who helped out with our wedding ceremony and to those who celebrated with us and came and sent us your good wishes and stuff like that. So thank you very much. And we just got back from a wonderful week up on the Oregon coast, relaxing and enjoying sunshine and rain and wind and all the stuff that the coast has to offer and stuff like that. So it's good to be back. And I love the trip because the trip was, we drove about 600 miles to get back yesterday. I feel like I'm a little boomy. Damien? Okay. And pulled in, unloaded the car. I came over here last night to wrap my talk up and put it down and get the reading ready and all that stuff. And drove back home, and on the way home I heard this kind of funny noise in the car, and I went around to look at the back, and there's the right rear tire completely dead flat in my garage. So, if you want to have a flat tire after a 600-mile trip, in your garage at home is the perfect timing for a flat tire, right? So, I'm grateful for that. Our talk today is called Don't Bring Me Down, and it's about group consciousness. And the Ernest Holmes quote that we're starting off with is, "We believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind." Now, it doesn't say the power necessarily of our own individual mind, the power of this capital M mind, our ability to tap into the one mind. Okay, so there is only one mind, right? This is what we teach here. We all get some degree of that. If we truly understood that, we'd all be totally massively enlightened and the world would be transformed into a complete, paradise. But we're knowing this and we're learning it and we're exposing ourselves to it as we go along. One of the things that can either support that or get in the way of that is what in religious science is known as race thought or race mind, which simply means the group consciousness that surrounds us. And we're all surrounded by group consciousnesses, because we all have numerous groups that we belong to, okay? So a group consciousness is simply the consciousness that is in the group that surrounds us. So this center has a group consciousness. The 9 o'clock service has a different consciousness than the 10:30 service, right? How many of you have ever been to a 10:30 service? Okay, and it's a different service, right? It's a different consciousness. Neither good or bad, not comparing, just different, okay? Reading has a different consciousness than, say, Oceanside, where I was. Yesterday we were having breakfast in one of the restaurants, and somebody walked in and asked, hey, did you see the whales out there, popping up today? You don't ask that question to Reading, do you? We don't. It's actually available. I mean, there are cameras out there that are mounted to look out at the ocean and places like that. We could actually check our camera in the morning and say, wow, I saw, whales breaching in, Mexico or Alaska or wherever. But we don't ask that question. It's not in our consciousness. There's a consciousness for Northern California. Northern California, us here, right? Which is different than the rest of California. There's a consciousness for the United States. There's a consciousness about being an American. Now, you notice North and South are called what? North and South? But where's America? It's us here in the United States of, right? So there's a consciousness about being an American. There's a consciousness about being a Canadian. There's a consciousness about being a Brit. And so we all have this group consciousness that surrounds us. And it influences us. It's the system or structure in which we think. And it becomes our normal. It feels normal around us. Okay? If you want to expose yourself to that, go to a different culture. Or hang out with people who are significantly of a different age than you. For us old folks, go hang out with some late teens or early 20s, and you'll find your consciousness exposed. If we go to a different country and really listen, we find our consciousness exposed for what it is. And we notice the systems of belief that they have. One of my favorite ways of doing this is when most of us have had the experience of a first Christmas with a new partner, right? And family rules, which is the group consciousness of the family, come into play of how you celebrate Christmas, right? Anybody besides me? Right? And so do you open the presents on Christmas Eve? Do you open the presents on Christmas morning? Do you set the tree up the first day after Thanksgiving? Do you set the tree up the week before Christmas? When do you take it down? All that stuff. All of that is just a group mind. It's a group consciousness. It's the consciousness of the family. And what we do is we go out and defend those values as our values and therefore the right values. If you really want to watch right values being defended right now, turn on the TV, watch the political games. Right? Yes? Okay. You know, we got the socialist. God, a socialist. You know? We got the true American who was actually born in Canada with a Cuban father and didn't like the previous president because he was born in probably Kenya or somewhere with a Kenyan father. Okay? We got all this stuff going on. Well, all this dynamic of who's right and who's wrong. That's a value system. So we surround ourselves with people who believe who we are, who believe what we think about ourselves, and who support our expectations of how high or low we will be in life. If you want to know what your life is going to look like, look at the people that you surround yourselves with. Take a breath. Look at the people you surround yourself with. One of the reasons that the rich get poor, or rich get richer and the poor get poorer, is because they surround themselves with people who have the same consciousness as they do and have certain expectations about them, who support their expectations and beliefs. If my normal is this, I tend to surround myself with people who mirror this, whatever it is. Okay? And then once I surround myself with those people, they tend to hold me in that place. The group consciousness that I surround myself with both supports and holds me into the place that I'm in. So one of the quickest ways to change in your life, create change in your life, is to change the people you hang out with. You know, it's one of the things that many of us have experienced. That if you've ever been in the 12-step program, you probably don't hang out with the same people you hung out with before the 12-step program, right? You don't hang out with your drinking and drugging friends anymore. Okay, you hang out with sober friends. And you hang out with a different consciousness. We seek mentors for ourselves. If we want to grow, we seek mentors. We seek somebody who is at a higher level than us. We seek what I call training partners. And I call it that because back when I was heavily into cycling, and I wanted to get better at cycling, I would hang out with other cyclists who were faster than I was. That's who I would go on my training rides with. And it was sometimes very painful. You know, I'd be the last one or one of the last couple up the hill, and as soon as I get up there, they'd look and say, okay, Robinson's here, let's go. They'd all had a 5-minute rest, waiting for me to finish that hill. You know, I'd be sitting there going, having a lung almost come up and say, wait, can we just gather, But after a while, I got better at it because I was hanging out with faster people who pushed me. When we hang out with people who will push us, who will challenge us to be more than who we are, we will start to grow into that model. And it's not comfortable at first, is it? Okay? It feels awkward. It feels awful. And sometimes we want to just quit. It's so much more comfortable back where I was. I'm just going to go and hang out with my comfortable old friends. I know them, they know me. They don't push me. They don't have any expectations. And then what happens is we don't grow. We move back into our comfort zone. I think we talked about comfort zone a couple weeks ago as being a grave with the lid not put on it, or a coffin with the lid not put on it. So as we do our own spiritual growth, we will attract those of our new consciousness. And we will tend to spin off those who don't reflect that consciousness. And it's one of the things that oftentimes when I encounter people who are fairly new into a movement like this, and they kind of get into it for a year, they sit there and go, I got some friends that I really love them, but I can't hang out with them anymore. They're so negative, but I feel so bad just saying I don't want to be with them. And it's one of the steps we have to do as we grow is we have to let go of that from the past. Anytime we're moving from anywhere to anywhere else, we have to let go of the past. See, for me to come to Reading here, I had to let go of the church in Clarkston Now, I love those people. They're nice people. Okay? But I had to let go of being their minister, or I could have never been the minister here. Right? Okay? And so for any time that we want to move forward into something, I had to let go of being a single bachelor, happy, by myself in order to be married. You have to let go of something in order to move into something new. And so the thing is we want to look at is, do our friends support us? I remember years and years and years ago, I have, a couple of you have probably figured out that my mother and I didn't have the greatest relationship throughout our whole lives. And she could be fairly abusive verbally. And there was a number of years ago, and I watched it happen actually with another friend and his significant parent. And I finally looked and said, is this a person that I would have in my life if they were not my blood relative? And when the answer came, absolutely not. I wouldn't have somebody who holds me like this, who talks to me like this, who puts me down constantly like this. I wouldn't want that person in my life. I made sure I distanced. I'd still send her a Mother's Day card. I'd still send her Christmas presents and birthday cards. But I distanced. I didn't hang out with and listen to that stuff anymore. And there are certain people we finally have to say, is this a person that as I'm growing, as I'm moving forward, as I'm becoming the more loving, more God-aware person, more self-aware, capital S, self-aware person that I am, is this really a person who I want to have around me? And sometimes the answer is no. And it's okay, because you know what? Once we say no to that person, guess what's over here? A new person or people that we make new friends with. See, I don't have a whole lot of friends from, say, 30 years ago. I don't have a whole lot of friends. Because most of my enlightenment and my awareness, my growth, my spiritual practice came after that period of time. And most of the people I grew up with had very low lives. Let's just put it that way. Very low, boxed-in lives for the most part. Some of them have gone on to do other things I found out since then. But for the most part, it wasn't a comfortable environment to hang out in. And so I had to move forward. I had to move on. And we all have to do that to some degree to move forward and to move on if we're being stuck in a place that is no longer supporting our growth and our essence of why we're here. Our essence of why we're here. So we can either be a thermometer or a thermostat. Okay? A thermometer just reacts to the temperature around them. Just reacts to whatever's going on around it. A thermostat controls what's going on around it. See, when we walked in this morning, I'm willing to bet that Reverend Mary, one of her first things that she did was walk over to the thermostats here and decide what temperature she wanted the place to be at. Okay? She didn't just sit there and go, God, it's really cold in here. And that was it. Okay? Because we have choice. We have choice. See, we can live in unfavorable weather, and the race consciousness around us is sort of like the weather system, right? It's like our weather pattern. We can live and we can do what we want in unfavorable weather, but it's a whole lot more fun in favorable weather, right? When I got to the beach house on last Sunday night, it was storming, it was blowing, it was probably 40-degree winds, pouring down rain, dark of night, and the owner of the house had mailed keys to me the week before, but they had never arrived. So he told me where the hidden key was, and I had to go, around the side of the house, which, was in the dark, with just, I had my little flashlight on my cell phone that I was using, blowing, gushing winds, over to the ocean side of the house, find out where he had the key, and get it undone, and I'm drenched by the time I, get back from that. Drenched, blown apart, and cold. Yesterday morning when we left, I wanted to make sure I remembered to put the key back. It's a beautiful sunny day. It was daylight. I could find the side of the house with ease. It's like, oh, that's what that looks like. I'm amazed I didn't trip over that. Wow, And it was so much easier. It was so much easier with favorable weather, right? And so that's what our race consciousness is like. It's not that we can't do what we want, but it's a whole lot easier with favorable weather. And so we want to set up a weather system, a thermostat around us that supports us in doing our life affirming what we want to do. So we can thrive in a hostile environment. You know, every sports team that's successful learns how to thrive in a hostile environment. Some people love that. I want to go into, okay, everybody knows I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. The stadium at Seattle is known as one of the most hostile environments to play in because it's so noisy. And there are certain teams that thrive on that. They practice how to do well in that environment, and they want to come in and kick the rears of the Seattle Seahawks in their own stadium. Doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. And they're happy and they're proud of themselves. And so we can have that also. We don't have to have favorable weather, but it is easier to do it. Once in a while, we want to make sure that we don't match the energy of what's around us. You know, the other day, yesterday when we were traveling home, there was somebody on the road who did something pretty darn stupid and rude. And I had a moment, just a moment, where I thought certain things that were unministerial, unreligious science, not perhaps the most loving thoughts. But I've learned a long time ago, don't match energies. It's one of my phrases. I have a friend who recently posted on Facebook, he talked about, he says, the moment you pull over because you realize the guy in front of you deserves the guy in back of you. The guy in front of you deserves the guy in back of you, and you just get out of the way. Okay? So we don't have to correct everything, we don't have to match energies, we don't have to fight everything. I want to look at race thought in one different way, one other way. Because in truth, in capital T truth, race thought is an illusion. It's an effect. See, there's only one mind, right? There's only one mind. Where does race thought come from? It's within the one mind. You know, we talk about it sometimes as though there's us and then there's the race thought around us, but there's only one. It's all one. And so all thought is within that one mind, and within that one mind is an infinite range of thought from pure pain to pure bliss. We, being conscious beings, get to choose where on that range we want to play. See, if we were unconscious, the rocks don't get to choose, do they? They're just there. Plants have a little more choice, animals have more choice, but we as evolved conscious human beings, some more than others, have a choice of what range we want to play in on that pain to bliss range. And so, because we're a choice, we have the ability to manifest what we want. We have the ability to manifest where we want to be. We get to ask ourselves the question of where will I hang out in the range of thought? Where do I want to hang out? Where do I want to hang out? So race thought is both chosen and created by us. See, at some point in time, we chose those people around us. Right? Some of it consciously, some of it not very consciously, oftentimes, especially growing up, not very consciously. You know, if you're like me at some point in your life, maybe in your teenage years, you chose to hang out with some people who maybe weren't the best to hang out with. You know, I grew up, up until about through my sophomore year in high school, I was one of those brainy kids. Okay, always on the honors list and stuff like that. And then for certain reasons, I decided to hit my rebellion years at about 16 to 17, junior year in high school. Started smoking things that were not tobacco in a nice Catholic school in Portland, Oregon, where that was not done. Yes, I inhaled. Started hanging out with a whole different crowd of people. To the point where in my yearbook at the end of the year, one of the people who used to be my friend said, "I remember you back when you were a nice guy." That was kind of the memory she was going to take away. Okay? And I consciously chose those friends because I was angry and in rebellion. So guess what? I was angry and in rebellion, and so I attracted around me what? Angry and rebellious people. Yes! They were so supportive. That's why I don't have any friends from 30 years ago. Because I finally had to say, okay, I don't want to hang out with that crowd anymore because I'm no longer wanting to be angry and rebellious. So we choose and we create, and then we forget that we created those around us and the thought around us, the race consciousness around us. And it both reflects our beliefs and then holds us there. Because we tend to stay where it's comfortable once we've set it up. And it appears to be a cause, but it's not really a cause. It's really an effect. You and I are always consciously at choice, or unconsciously, but we're always at choice with who is it and what environment we're going to hang out with. And so if we don't like it, we start to change the choices we are making. And when we start to choose those, when we do our spiritual practice, when we get deep into ourselves, when we get deep into listening to the Spirit within and spending time with that, that will start to manifest out around us in every single circumstance. When we start to contemplate the true God's person within, not my physical self, not my mental self, not my intellectual self or my emotional self, but the true person, the true spiritual being within that we all are, that is what will start to reflect around us in both our circumstances, the structures around us, and the people and race thought around us. And so we can both change by consciously changing who we hang out with in the outer. Okay? And we can also change by working within. And the ideal comes from doing a little of both. I call it burning the candle at both ends. We do both the inner work and we do the outer work that we're guided to from the inner work. Who else do I want to hang out with? Who might be better? You know, I came back from the National Convention. While I was there was a minister there that I've admired in the movement for a while, and we were talking, and I said, would you be my mentor? I'd really like to have somebody who's been at it for a lot more years than I have, and who's successful and good at this. Will you be my mentor? And she said yes. And so we have a mentoring arrangement set up going forward, because I want to grow as a minister. I don't want to just sit here and say, this is my comfort zone. I'm good enough right now. I mean, I'm good enough right now, but I also want to get better. Right? And so do we take ourselves and give ourselves mentors? I still have my original mentor from when we graduate from mentoring school, from ministerial school. In the tradition that I grew up with, we were assigned a mentor, and that mentor still, every once in a while, she'll spot my Facebook posts, and she'll send me a little message, and she'll say, are you sure you want to say that? She still keeps me on my toes, and I have to look at that and go, yeah, let me think about that again. Delete. Whole posts go away. Our current collective consciousness has created our current experience of the world, and it also creates our outer world. So in order to change the outer, we have to change the inner. And the current political drama that we're looking at is really just a reflection of our collective inner consciousness. Our collective consciousness. What's happening, if there's a theme that is expressing this year in politics, it's we don't want more of the same. We don't want more of the same. And whether it's on I'll call one extreme Bernie, or on the other extreme Donald or Ted, we're saying we don't want more of the same. Or there's a whole lot of people saying that. Okay? And that's a theme that's coming out. Now what the not more of the same looks like, there's some wide differences on that, right? Okay? But we're saying no, not more of the same. There are different visions being put out, but there's the same theme of something wants to grow, something wants to shift. We collectively know that we can't keep on doing what we're doing. That in order to create a world that works for all, we have to collectively do something different. Yes? So we have to collectively do something different. We have to change our individual and our collective thought. And here's the kicker. Such a world is not going to look the way I think it should. A world that works for all isn't going to look the way that we think it should. Because most of us are thinking it should look like our collective belief system, what we know now. And what we know now is a world that doesn't work for all. It's going to be something new. It's going to be something that we haven't seen before. It's going to be something that we don't expect. When the two movements, International and United, were starting to come together, okay, there was a whole lot of fear. Money, who's going to have control of the money? Who's going to control the education? What's the classes going to look like? What's the ministerial and practitioner training going to look like? All this stuff. You know who led the way? The youth. The teenagers of both groups got together and said, okay, first of all, we're youth in religious science. Let's take all of our money and pool it together, from the International Youth and the United Youth, pull it together and start working together. They weren't going to wait for all the old folks to get through all the bylaws changes and the educational changes and the how are we going to, it's just like, oh, let's just do it. We know this is what needs to be done. We know this is what's going to work. Let's just do it. Okay? That's the vision. And the old folks sat there and went, oh my God. And then went about their creating bylaws changes, and we're still working on educational changes and and all that stuff, right? And so, but the youth got it. And that's that fresh new vision. The youth represent, and it doesn't have to necessarily be, it's not an age thing. But the youthfulness within us, that newness within us, that which is willing to experiment and risk and fail and try something different, that is what is going to create the world that works for all. And that's what it's also going to create for your own individual life, a world that works better for you. And so the question is, will you bring that youthfulness, that newness, that willingness to try something new and get out of the same old that we surround ourselves with into your life? And so this week I want to invite you to do play with three things in spiritual practice. Number one is to pay attention to the group thoughts and beliefs that are surrounding you now. If you were walking through your life not knowing it was your life, if you were a stranger walking beside yourself, walking around looking, what am I believing about this? What am I assuming about this? And some of the toughest part is the stuff that's so silent and so built in that we assume it. We just assume it. Okay? It's hard to get out of. When people are talking about race relationships between African Americans and white people, they talk about white privilege, and white people are so unaware of what's called white privilege. We don't have to walk down the street wondering if somebody is going to not like us because of the color of our skin, right? Especially in Reading. Okay? There are other things that people might not like us for, but we don't worry about that. Okay? It's not even on our radar. What is it that we assume? Secondly, what kind of group thought would the person you want to be surrounded by? All of us have a person we want to be. We have our next step, right? We have our next stage of who we would really like to be. Not who we think we're going to become because, well, after all, I'm a certain age, or I live in a certain place, or I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or I'm this, or I'm that. Not that. Okay. Not the assumed, that's the race thought, but the one that's dancing in your heart that says, who do I really want to be? That if all that wasn't true, who would I be? Who would that person be surrounded by in terms of their thinking, in terms of their friends, in terms of the race thought that surrounds them? Who would that be? Who would you be surrounded by then? This can also help you to identify, by the way, what's currently not working in your race thought. Okay? Because if you're sitting there and your race thought's saying, well, I'm a certain age and I can't do this, and your heart's saying, but I want to do this. Okay? It's your race thought saying, I can't do this. And then finally, of the three practices, create the race thought that you choose. You get to choose it. Create the thought that surrounds you. It might start for you as just holding a bubble of thought around yourself, but trust me, that bubble will grow, and pretty soon you'll hear it being repeated back to you from other people. I remember one day I was working on wealth consciousness, and I showed up at a bakery after doing some early morning photography. This is in Los Angeles. I was wearing an old t-shirt and jeans because I'd been out on the beach digging in the sand and rocks and climbing all over and doing some photography. And I walked into a bakery to have a little pastry, and was trying to decide which of the two pastries that I wanted. And the lady behind the counter looks at me and she goes, I get the sense that you could afford the bakery if you wanted it. Now, I didn't look that way, right? But my consciousness, I'd been working a lot on my wealth consciousness at the time, and she picked that up. Whatever it was that I was radiating, She picked it up. And all of a sudden it's being reflected. Yeah, dummy. You don't have to choose either this or that. It's a both and universe. You can have both. That's back in the days when I was in my early 30s and I was a lot skinnier. I could do those without paying for it. So as we're creating this race thought, remember that your choice is the creative agent in your life. Your choice. If anything separates us from the rest of life, it's our choice. And you have the power to recreate the surrounding thoughts and people around you. No matter where you are right now, you have the power to recreate the thoughts and the people that surround you now. The thing is, will you? Will you do the tough work that's called for to do that? Because it may be uncomfortable and it may be challenging at first, but will you do it? Will you do that? And so that's the three practices that I would like to invite you in. One, just notice, what is your current race thought? What is it that currently surrounds you? Pay attention. Secondly, what kind of group would you like to have around you? What kind of race thought would you like to have around you? And finally, start to create it. Will you do that this week? Will you play with that this week? Great. I want to leave you with a quote from Swami Muktananda. The same mind that is the cause of suffering is also the means of attaining the highest happiness. Got that? The same mind. Which is whose mind? Your mind. Let's try it again. Whose mind? Yeah. The same mind that is the cause of suffering is also the means of attaining the highest happiness. One who has made the mind pure, which simply means it's clear to God, pure, clear to God. One who has made the mind pure, strong, and still is able to accomplish anything. I invite you this week to have your mind pure, strong, and still. And listen to that voice within. And then from that, create the thought around you. Let's move into prayer. So I know that there is, in fact, only that one mind. One mind, one life, only one. And we are expressions of that mind. That mind is just simply the pure life, the pure love, the pure light, the joy, the power, the beauty, the wisdom of Spirit. We're one of it. We are right this second one of it, right now. No matter what our history, no matter what our perceived future, no matter even what surrounds us in our thoughts, we are still right this moment one of that infinite presence. Right now. And so in this now moment, we open more fully to that presence, more fully to the awareness of who we truly are, of our true magnificence, of how great we as God beings truly are. This is not an egoic job. This is us recognizing our oneness with an infinite presence. And the magnificence of that presence that has chosen to be us. And just simply allowing that awareness to spread throughout our being, throughout our surroundings, throughout all of our structures in our life, our home, our finances, our relationships, our work, everything we do, our friends, the surrounding thoughts around us are infused with. We allow this awareness to simply spill over into that and to show up in every single one of those areas. We say yes to the divine within us, yes to the fullest, brightest, shiningest expression of that divine within us. And it transforms us and it transforms our lives. It lifts us up into who we truly are. It doesn't make us something we're not. It makes us who we truly, truly are. And we stop being who we never were. And so for this I'm grateful. For each of us who says yes to this light, yes to this love, yes to this life energy, yes to this spirit, and allows it to flesh out our lives, to shine in our lives. I'm so grateful. For the Spirit itself, I'm ever so grateful. And so I release this word into a law that moves it into form and expression in our lives right here, right now, in the most beautiful, most perfect ways possible. We allow it to be, we let it be by simply saying together, and so it is.